My sister got pregnant by my husband while living with us, and now wants me to leave so they can be a family. But now she feels cheated because my husband doesn't own anything. I'm 34 years old, and I let my sister Julie, 28, move in with me a couple of months ago because she was in a very bad financial situation. Julie had lost her job due to her company shutting down. 2 weeks after that, she became seriously ill with West Nile virus. After discussing it with our parents, I decided to have her move in with me for a few weeks so I could take care of her, monitor her recovery, and ensure she could save on rent, as she clearly wouldn't be able to work for a while. She was probably at her lowest point back then, and I was the one who helped her because our parents don't live nearby, and she doesn't exactly have many friends in a position to help. It was what I would do for any family member or friend, help them in a time of need. But she repaid me by having an affair with my husband. On top of that, she had the audacity to tell me that I should leave the house so they could be a happy family because she was pregnant. This happened a couple of days ago. Julie asked my husband and me to sit down in the living room because she had something very important to tell us. I thought she was finally moving out because she had been recovering pretty well in the past few weeks. I assumed she was going to tell us she was finally getting back to work and would soon be out of our lives. Instead, she told us that she and my husband had been having an affair for the past few weeks and that she was now pregnant. When I looked at my husband, I saw that he was as shocked as I was. Clearly, this wasn't something she had discussed with him before telling me, which explains a lot. Anyway, after she told me she was pregnant with my husband's baby, she added that she understood this was probably shocking to me and that she was very sorry it had happened. But at the end of the day, there was no way to change the past. She would appreciate it if I vacated the house because she would feel very uncomfortable being around me in her current condition. I was furious, but I didn't show it. I just calmly told her that I wasn't leaving the house because this property belongs to me. If anyone had to leave, it would be her, taking my cheating husband with her. They could form their happy family wherever they wanted because I was going to file for divorce, and I didn't even want to see them again. I spoke as calmly as I could, controlled my anger, and tried to handle the situation with dignity. They had already blindsided me, so I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me lose control in front of them. After I told her this was my property and I wasn't leaving, she told me I had to. Apparently, she thought I was joking. But then my husband told her I wasn't joking and explained that he was a stay-at-home husband and always had been. Apparently, he had lied to her about everything from the beginning. For context, my husband and I have been together for 8 years. We've been married for the past 5, and a couple of months after we got married, I decided to take the risk of starting my own business. Thank goodness it has gone very well. So my husband and I decided he could stay home and work as a writer, something he enjoyed as a hobby but could now pursue full-time. For the past 4 years, he's been at home working on his big novel and taking care of household chores. We don't have kids, so he doesn't have much to do. The property and everything else are mine because I technically bought it, and we both thought it was fair that I owned everything. I bet he's regretting that now. After he told Julie that he didn't actually own anything and had lied to her about everything, she started to lose it on him, calling him a fraud and a liar. While it was entertaining to watch her lose her temper with him, I wasn't interested in any of that at the moment. I just wanted both of them out of my house. I had to intervene, stop them from yelling at each other, and tell them to leave my house immediately. I wasn't willing to give them time, I just wanted them gone. My husband is relatively smart. He knew there was no way he'd come out of this well because there's nothing more important to me than my self-respect and dignity. I was never going to forgive a cheater. So, silently, he went to the bedroom and started packing. Julie, on the other hand, decided to start begging me on her knees, telling me she would do anything to fix what had happened but that she needed a place to stay. She said I couldn't throw out a pregnant woman, especially since she was having a baby who would be my nephew. The fact that she mentioned we were family is what really enraged me. So, I grabbed her arm, forced her to stand up, walked her to the door, and then physically pushed her out. I was very rough with her, but I didn't care. I was furious that she would say we were family and that I couldn't throw her out. It really set me off. Sleeping with my husband? We weren't family then, but now she wanted to use that as an excuse? Once she was outside, she kept begging me not to do this, but I slammed the door shut. Then I went to the guest room, started throwing all her stuff into her suitcases messily without caring if anything broke, and, in a few minutes, threw those suitcases out with her. I told her to leave or I'd call the police. She kept crying, but I just closed the door and went back inside. A few minutes later, my husband came out with his suitcases, telling me he was very sorry. I pretended not to hear him. Julie kept crying and begging on the porch for about an hour after he left, but I put on headphones and completely blocked her out. At some point, I no longer heard her whining on the porch and realized she was finally gone. That same night, I spoke with my lawyer, told them everything that had happened, and said I wanted to file for divorce. I thought I'd tell my friends and family later, but the next day I got a call from my parents telling me what I'd done was horrible. To my parents, I had been cruel and insensitive to my sister, someone who had been through a lot recently. It seemed very strange to me because until now, my parents had always treated Julie and me equally. It's not like she's the favorite child or anything, but the fact that they were defending her didn't sit well with me. They said they knew she was pregnant and that I couldn't throw her out in her condition, especially when I knew perfectly well that she was between jobs and recovering from a serious illness. They said it would take her time to get back on her feet. Also, she had no one else here who could take care of her as well as I could. All her friends were in the same financial situation and had their own jobs and families to worry about rather than looking after her. So, as her sister, the least I could do was forgive her for her stupidity and be there for her. To top it all off, they pointed out that it was my husband who seduced her, and it wasn't her fault. Apparently, my husband had been telling her he owned everything and managed the finances at home because he was a highly successful novelist and screenwriter. Since he didn't want the fame that came with it, he claimed to remain anonymous. And my sister, who is an idiot, actually believed all of that. She started to think he might be someone important, so she ended up seducing him. Then, when she became pregnant, Julie thought it was finally time to inform me that she had been having an affair with my husband, so the two of them could kick me out. Unfortunately for them, that plan backfired, especially because she hadn't even discussed anything with my husband before telling me everything. Basically, she ruined everything for both herself and my husband. So, I stood my ground. First I asked, "What sister? I don't have a sister." Then I argued that I had every right to kick her out because she was the one who decided to have an affair with my husband. Regardless of whether or not he was complicit, it was clear she played an equal part. Both of them joined forces to betray me, so it made no sense to kick my husband out while letting her stay as if nothing had happened. I didn't care if she was pregnant or not, or if she could work at that moment or not, because I had already considered all that before and allowed her to stay with me for months. She repaid me by having an affair with my husband while under my roof. And it's not even like she was in the advanced stages of pregnancy and incapable of handling things. She was probably only a few weeks in, and I'm sure she could manage. Even if she had been 9 months pregnant, I still would have kicked her out because what she did was repugnant. After all, she was ready to kick me out when she thought our house belonged to my husband, so I see this as poetic justice. But my parents kept insisting on that same point over and over again, especially emphasizing how harsh I had been with her. I got tired of listening to them and hung up. It was evident they weren't going to let this go, and we haven't spoken since. Do you think I was wrong to kick my pregnant sister out of the house? Update 1. I know some people think kicking a pregnant woman out of my house is horrible, but I couldn't leave her living under my roof. It's madness. Thankfully, most people think I did the right thing and that she should find somewhere else to stay. Moving on to the update, I blocked my parents yesterday. Unfortunately, this whole situation has hit me hard. But I can't stop working to recover from what's happening in my personal life. I'm the boss. I'll just have to put on a strong front and face the situation. So, at work, everything has been business as usual. But as soon as I get home, I break down because I'm emotionally devastated. I've been holding it together for the last few days, but now it's really starting to hurt. My lawyer and I filed for divorce a couple of days ago, and I believe my husband will be served soon. I know he's not going to contest the divorce. He knows me well enough to realize that if he does, I'll make sure he pays for it. But at the end of the day, it still hurts. Winning the divorce isn't going to automatically make things better for me. I just can't imagine why, after 8 years together, he had to have an affair with my sister. I truly believed we were in love. I honestly thought we were going to be together forever and grow old together. But now I'm doubting everything we've had over the years. Maybe this isn't even the only person he's cheated on me with. Maybe this is just the first time he's been caught. Even the thought of that breaks my heart, but there's not much I can do about it except accept it and try to move on. He's the only one who hasn't tried to contact me since I kicked him out. My parents have, and so has Julie, but that's different because I know they just want me to take her back so she can keep staying here for free. It's even more insane that my parents are siding with her right now. In my original post, I talked about how my parents never had a favorite child. They always treated Julie and me equally. But now, honestly, I don't know what to think about this. I have no expectations of Julie. Julie and I were never best friends, but we didn't exactly have a bad relationship either, which is why I agreed to help her and let her stay here. We already had a spare room in the house, so I thought, why not? That's what my parents wanted too, so I didn't see any issue in helping her because that's what family does. At least, I never expected her to betray me like this. You don't expect someone you've been helping for months to stab you in the back. However, with my parents, it's a different story. Since they've always been reasonable and fair, I expected them to be upset with Julie. I'm not saying they aren't. Based on the conversation we had before, it was clear they weren't happy with how Julie handled the situation. But they kept insisting that the damage was already done, and that now the only thing we could do was accept what had happened and try to move on. Honestly, I don't know what's wrong with my parents, but they've seriously disappointed me with their behavior. I think I've lost all the respect I had for them, and I don't think I can regain it because of this situation. Right now, I'm emotionally drained, and mentally, I'm just focusing on work. Everything in my personal life has essentially fallen apart. I haven't even told my friends about this yet, but I know at some point I'll have to let them know what's happening. After all, my husband and I have many mutual friends, and I'd prefer for them to hear about the situation from me rather than from him. I don't know what he might say at this point. I don't know what to expect from anyone anymore. Anyway, right now, I'm just trying to focus on a couple of things for the time being. First, of course, making sure my work doesn't suffer because of this, and I'll make sure of that. Secondly, I also have to deal with the divorce process. Although I'm 90% sure he won't contest the terms since I've decided to be pretty fair and reasonable, there's still a small chance of uncertainty about what he might do. Right now, everything is a big question mark, so I'm preparing all the documentation just in case. Aside from that, I'm trying to keep my mind as clear as possible because I really don't want to overwork myself and spiral. That's the last thing I need right now. But venting here about my feelings has been really helpful, and I really appreciate the fact that so many of you have reached out, commented on my post, and been so supportive. You don't know how much I appreciate it. Update 2. As I expected, after being served, my husband decided to contact me and say he wasn't going to contest the divorce. He thought the divorce terms were very fair. He sent me a text saying all this, and then in the next one, he told me that over the last few days, he'd been thinking of ways to apologize to me but couldn't come up with anything because everything he thought of seemed weak and insincere. So, he decided to get it out of his system by telling me he was very sorry via text. He told me he lied to Julie just to impress her because he had been feeling very weird lately about the fact that he didn't own anything and had to rely on his wife for finances. We don't even have a child, so he couldn't even have the dignity of being a stay-at-home dad. He felt useless. Since his novel wasn't progressing well either, he felt like he had wasted 4 years of his life on something going nowhere. He had been feeling particularly down about it, but he couldn't even admit it to himself, let alone talk to me about it. He said he felt really bad about himself, and when Julie showed up, before he could even think about how depraved his actions were, he started lying to her about everything, trying to impress her. Shortly after, they were sleeping together. He thought it was just going to be a one-time slip-up, and although he felt very guilty, he couldn't control himself. He needed a way to distract himself from everything going on, and that was his way. But then she got pregnant, and we had that horrible conversation 2 weeks ago, after which everything went to absolute disaster. He told me he truly regretted everything he did. He ruined everything we had, but he promised me this was the first and last time he ever cheated on me. He swore this had never happened before and said he really needed me to trust him on that. Maybe, at some point in the future, if I could, he hoped I would forgive him for everything he had done wrong. That was the message. And after reading it, I ended up crying because it was just another reminder of everything I had lost. I thought I had this man whom I loved and who loved me, but in the span of a single day, I lost all of that. Believe me, it's not easy to deal with that. I know everyone who has gone through a divorce or been cheated on probably knows exactly what I'm talking about. I could say a bunch of horrible things about him to make myself hate him for now, but at the end of the day, it still hurts. I hated myself for crying over that message, but at least after I finished crying, I gathered the strength to block him without responding. Honestly, even though I was so upset over everything, he didn't deserve a response. I wasn't going to forgive him, especially not now, when everything is still so fresh. After a while, I actually started to feel a little angry about everything he had said because all he had to do was talk to me. I, for one, never, ever made him feel bad for choosing to stay home and work on his novel. I'm not a very creative person. I've never been into writing or anything like that, aside from now, as I really need to get these things off my chest, but I respected his creative side. I didn't see anything wrong with him staying at home. I could understand that maybe his fragile male ego couldn't handle it. Maybe other people made comments, and maybe he just became bitter. But the least he could have done, after 8 years with me, was tell me what was going on. We got married to support each other, and I was going to be there for him in that. Then maybe we could have worked it out together. But he chose not to do that. He chose to support Julie, and that's how we ended up in this mess. The more I think about it, the more disgusting and pathetic he seems to me. The fact that he lied to her about so many things just to make himself seem bigger and better is pathetic. I loved him as he was, but that wasn't enough for him. This just will never make sense to me. At least with Julie, I can understand her motive. She wanted to live my life and have it without making any effort, and she thought she could do that by getting pregnant and moving in with my husband, the supposedly rich man. So now I can simply choose to ignore her existence. In a few months, I'll be done with the divorce, and then I'll never have to see him or think about him again. Update 3. It's been a couple of days since my last update, and I'd had some quiet days. But this morning, my parents showed up at my house. I found it strange because, in recent years, ever since they moved back to my dad's hometown to run the family business with my uncle, they almost never visit us. Usually, it was Julie and me who had to go see them, so the fact that they had taken a flight to come see me was already a big deal. But I knew they were only here to talk about Julie. That's why, when I opened the door, I told them that if they were here to talk about her, I really didn't want to hear it. After all, there's only one Sunday a week, and I really didn't want to waste mine rehashing the same thing all over again. I had already said everything I had to say, and so had they. Right now, we had nothing left to discuss about that situation. I also made it very clear to them that I would only let them in if they first apologized to me. So they could apologize to me right then, or they could leave. I made my boundaries very clear. But my parents told me they had come specifically to talk to me about Julie. They said we had to talk about this because the way I was treating them wasn't right, and neither was the way I was treating Julie. To them, we were family, and we dealt with things differently. Once again, they were bringing up the family topic. And just like with Julie, I lost my patience with them too. This isn't how families treat each other, at least not in the family I'd like to have. At least I'll concede that in this family, we handle things differently. My sister sleeps with my husband, and I kick her out of my house. That's very different from normal families. I completely called out my parents. They kept trying to ramble and find arguments, but I didn't even let them speak. I talked over all of their arguments. By the time I finished, my mom was literally reduced to tears. But they were in my territory. I could speak to them however I wanted, especially because they decided to bother me this morning. All this talk should be directed at Julie, the one who acted wrong, not me. Anyway, after I finished yelling at them, my mom was crying so hard that my dad simply told me he never wanted to talk to me again, because I was a horrible daughter for making my own mother, who gave me life, cry like that. But I don't care. They can think I'm crazy. I know I'm not, and that's enough for me. If anyone is crazy, it's my parents. Although my sister isn't very sane either, to be honest. Update 4. It's been a month since my last update, and I haven't been in contact with anyone in my family, not Julie and definitely not my parents. All I know is they're still sending her money. As for my soon-to-be ex-husband, I've heard from a couple of people that he's now living with his parents. Once the divorce is finalized, he plans to move to another state. Before you ask, I don't know what he's planning to do about his child. By now, pretty much all of our friends know exactly what happened, and most of them have started excluding him from their lives. Well, most of them. Some don't want to get involved and are trying to stay neutral. All I know is my life is slowly but steadily getting back on track, and I'll do whatever it takes to protect my peace now. I'm not exactly happy, but at least I'm at peace, which is an improvement compared to last month. Little by little, I know I'll be happy again. I mean, all bad things eventually come to an end, right? Update 5. I have a fairly recent update because there have been some developments that you might want to know about. So, I'm not going to leave you hanging. My sister has lost the pregnancy and has been blaming me, claiming she lost it because of all the stress I caused her. My parents are also on that same crusade. The good thing is they aren't bothering me directly. Instead, these are things I've heard through neutral people. People who say they don't want to take sides but somehow do by accusing me of killing a baby because of my pride. I find it funny because none of them have decided to take my sister into their homes. So, from my point of view, they should also be guilty by their own standards. I tried to be a good sister to her, helping her when I could. But if she betrays me, then she's no different from a stranger. She's no longer my responsibility. If she cared about her pregnancy, she shouldn't have slept with someone's husband, especially her sister's, or, at the very least, she should have used protection. None of this is normal in the fantasy world some people live in, but I don't care. When accusations come from people as irrational as they are, it's not worth spending time on them. Update 6. My ex-husband contacted me a few hours ago, and you won't believe what he had to say. No, he didn't ask me to come back. We haven't ended things on bad terms, so to speak, which is why I responded. He has accepted like a man that he made mistakes, and, at least, has made the divorce process easier for me. So, I don't hold a grudge. Though, mostly, I do this for myself. It's not worth wasting my time hating him or thinking about him in any way. No cheater is worth it. I think what he had to tell me is quite interesting because he basically confirmed that my sister wasn't pregnant. He called me to tell me because he knew a lot of people were bad-mouthing me, and he felt I needed to know the truth. He's also told those people the truth. He knows because he had been asking her for proof of the pregnancy and offered to accompany her to a medical appointment several times, but she was always quite evasive about it. Finally, the news came that she lost it. When he asked her for proof of the pregnancy, she didn't have any. He talked to my parents, and they didn't have any proof either. There's no evidence she was ever pregnant or that she lost the baby. She simply woke up one day and told everyone she had lost it. So that's the end of that. And that's also the beginning of a big screw you for everyone who has been accusing me of making my sister lose the baby. My parents have tried to contact me to repair the relationship and have even stopped funding my sister now that they won't be grandparents. But this gesture doesn't mean much to me. I'm not interested in what they do now with my sister. What I wanted was for them to support me, like any parent would support a daughter who was betrayed. So no, the screw you goes to them too. So my sister lost a sister, a house, and my help because she slept with my husband and faked a pregnancy. And my parents lost a daughter because they chose a fake pregnancy. I think the three of them are ready to go to Las Vegas and gamble. I'm sure they'll do great.